that are eligible, the 04, this number 1 machine, and the 93. Both of their regular season pilots have to do at least a stint in this first 3 hours. So you got Hinman behind the wheel of the 93, and you expect Shelby Blackstock to be getting in at some point, and then on the 93, excuse me, on the 04, Colin Brown will do a stint as well.
And
so
here comes
Balzan is in.
Balzan, yep.
That conversation they had, and you could see there you're faster on that 13 to 14 sprint to the line than the safety car almost.
So now he's going to bring it in, top it off, and put Martin on board.
And now these cars on pit lane are running at 50 kilometers an hour maximum speed. 80 kilometers an hour is supposedly the safety car, so you're losing a little bit there, but then just a quick splash. So you're not losing a ton of time. We see in the backdrop there. The 34 car, Afafas back in again. They may be going for tires as well at this stage.
Sure looks like it. A fresh set of wets.
Oh, one tire, maybe it's one tire.
Oh,
you
that's
can do
true.
one tire and refuel.
You can refuel in one tire and do that minimum.
Maybe if they got a little bit of understeer in the car and they've been grinding on that right front a little bit, that may be the option. So they can still do the short stop if they only change one and do refuel. No, going to all 4 here. So we've got too much time on our hands, Greg, to be outthinking these teams, I think.
Yeah, I agree completely here. And the number 1 Ferrari also going for a fresh set of wets, and there's not really a limitation on wet tires, so you can go through them pretty much as you'd like at this stage.
Other key is you could bring them out the tire blankets as well, so that would be a huge advantage when you go back to green if you've got relatively warm wet weather tires. And you think about the wet tire, it's not just got grooves over a slicks, it's also a softer compound as well, so it'll bite the tarmac a little bit more effectively.
I think that's a really good strategic point. You've got those in those blankets. That's going to be a lot more grippy right from the off as the Nova Hotels Hublot Ferrari heads down and comes out right in front of the 34 BMW of Farfus. So they both doing those long stops and doing it in sync essentially. About obviously under caution, that was the margin they had. So now that should have promoted the number 30 of Cameron now up into the lead. The Team Honda Racing by Yas Motorsports Acura NSX GT3 over the 35 team car of this black one here from Bakenhorst BMW of Martin Tomczyk. Then the 31 Audi Sport Team Hardpoint by WRT Audi of Winkelhock. Then the number 7 Capex Bentley in the hands of Jordan Pepper, who I think in many ways in the opening certainly half hour of this race put in just an amazing drive, keeping that Bentley on those slicks in those conditions and at speed for a while.
Yeah, looking at Farfus's time as 112.78 seconds, so just 7/10 out of the minimum there, so they executed that nicely. Balzan was about 8 seconds longer on that stop, so that's why they came out closer together.
Here's the number 69 BGB Motorsports Porsche. And running right up, obviously a lot of caution running here, but Tom Collingwood has been able to keep that car in play here in the GT4 category, and now they just got to wait for this clock to tick away. And we get another update from Race Control. They're anticipating that we can go green next time by, as they're of course polling all the teams and the drivers about what kind of conditions are we looking at. Is that pond debating over in turn 14? This is going to be interesting, Cal, because the first car now behind the pace car is the leader in the GT4 category, Matt Dalton. As the lights go out, so we've got 2 GT4 cars that are going to lead this field to green, and then a number of the GT3 competitors. Here's a look at his real name is Joe, but he goes by Matt, as I said, to honor his grandfather. And this latter half of the season, he's really sort of hit his stride. His first season of doing any kind of serious top-level racing, let alone pro racing, and teamed with Patrick Gallagher. He's really, his learning curve has been impressive.
Well, surviving those opening laps on slick tires was amazing. And again, the key factor here is you cannot pass on a restart until the start-finish line.
Now the number 17, again, once that field comes up and is alongside, you have to get held here.
Well, Well, I think they may be serving a penalty.
That's a very good point.
Pit lane is not closed because of the position of the safety car. I think they're serving a stop and hold penalty, Greg.
That's exactly right. Yep, it's on the monitor now. The Acura NSX safety vehicle down into the pits, and Matt Dalton is going to be bringing the field up. He's in that restart zone. He can go whenever he wants at this stage. He's a little cautious going to the throttle. The cars behind him are coming up, but for those GT3 cars, you got to wait till the yard of bricks. Now you can go. And Cameron makes the move down to the inside, and you can see already, even though the rain's abating, Cal, look at the spray behind these lead three.
Yeah, and the other problem is you just cannot see these cars around you, Greg. So if you've got someone down the inside, look at the Bentley there trying to thread the needle towards the back of this little pack coming into turn one. Winkelhock there down to the inside.
Boy, and Tom Jack doing a nice job threading the needle, and look at around the outside, Jordan Pepper trying to make the move on Winkelhock as they come up now in that number 2 Porsche of Andrew Davis.
Let's see if Bentley have found the secret sauce in these wet conditions. They were worried about putting wet tires on this car this weekend in terms of how the car would perform. Pepper there, shortcuts turn 5 and 6. Key is you got to touch those blue and white curbs and not be called on a penalty there.
Oh, look at this, 3, 4, 5 wide, not abreast necessarily. Tomczyk just absolutely taking no prisoners. Yes, it was.
Winkelhock nearly getting into the back of that GT4 machine.
Obviously, he does not want to lose touch at this stage with Tomczyk, but you get into certain parts of this track, even as wide as it is, it's not necessarily a place you can pass, especially in these conditions, as the 0-4 in. It looks like they have done a driver change in that CrowdStrike AWS racing entry. There's the number 20, Max Root.
Michael Brown jumping in. I would assume that he'll probably stay in the car for a couple of stints here, get to that 3-hour mark and try and push the car up the field a little bit. Very much a long shot for them to win the championship. Essentially, they continue running, and if there was an early retirement for the one car, it would swing it the other way, but they need a ton of luck for that and some extreme poor luck on the number 1 Squadra Corsa entry.
Oh boy, wide run here by Conrad in that number 75, and that's where that puddle is, and he had to really check up, Cal.
And again, these drivers will be exploring the racetrack, just trying to find a better way of getting around here and finding the grip. The best racing line, the theoretical line, goes out of the window at this stage. Is where he's got the bite. Where do you find that grip? Where do you get the tire to work best? Really tight there.
Whitmer, I think his goal was to pass the number 25 there, but he almost came up on the back of the number 2 of Lee.
McAleen in there in the mix as well.
Yeah, exactly. In the McLaren. Now McLaren's down a lap, but this move here.
Look at Whitmer flying around the outside.
That would be for the lead, I think, right now.
GMG Audi has to
look
take.
At that move, and look at behind him, Oberlin.
Woo!
Using every inch of racetrack and maybe a tick more here. Wow.
Battle we're seeing there. That is fantastic stuff. The battle for second in class, I believe, Greg.
Yep.
With Dalton out front still.
Yeah, Dalton has just done a superb job on this restart. And with a lot of the traffic, the GT3 cars coming through, the GT4 behind him, sometimes that just gives you an opportunity in all of those visibility issues here. And Oberlin now ducking down under Dr. Jim Rappaport, orthopedic surgeon who is running the full season of the American GT4 Sprint X Championship. But understanding the scenario here, some of these cars coming through. Ooh, and look at that big lunge by Farfus.
In the pits.
Yeah. Farfus swinging around the outside of Lee. Here's that bit of a danger zone, but looks like that pond has abated a bit. Dropped off in terms of its depth, so everybody able to roll a little bit more speed. And Bill Oberlin, he's been in that faster category of car many times in working traffic, and that oftentimes gives you an advantage when you're in the slower unquote-unquote category, because you're familiar with the mindset of the guy that's passing you, and you can either use it to your advantage, or you can just, you know exactly where to just open the wheel, let him slot through, and not lose time.
Yeah, and Farfus behind the wheel of this BMW right now, but Bill Oberlin, all his success, or 90% of his success, has been with BMW brand. There's a chance he may have even driven that chassis somewhere over the years.
Exactly, and he's probably raced with Augusto as well. He is carving his way through things. It's still Cameron leading overall now by a little over 4 seconds back to the 35 BMW of Tomczyk, in the 31 of Winkelhock and Jordan Pepper. And then 5th right now is the number 75 of Conrad, and then this car sits in the 6th spot overall right now.
Cameron in clear air just set the fastest lap of the race at 1:32.28. So we'll have to wait and see if there's no more rain when we get to that crossover phase where the wet tires start to burn off a little bit, no longer effective as Farfus is slicing his way through this field. There's Dalton, the Aston Martin ahead of these two GT3 cars. He continues to lead GT4.
Oh boy, this is going to be interesting. Does he get split on each side? Yes, no. Look for a minute. I think Farfus might just ramp the outside on him, and I think Augusto said, yeah, just in case he doesn't see me, he tracks out. That's not a good plan.
Farfus is a magician in the rain, Greg. The performance that he put together to secure the Rolex 24-hour win last year at Daytona was immense. Just abysmal conditions, and it was like he was driving in the dry compared with everyone else in the wet.
He was in a different zip code, really, wasn't he?
He just got that feel for the grip, which is what it's all about at that level. I mean, there's so many great drivers, but there's some who just have that little bit extra, and Augusto's certainly in that category.
He's a good one to have in your quiver then, for sure.
Fun guy too, very energetic. I think he's got a lot of positive energy when he's with a camp or with a team.
Well, and just that level of professionalism and execution, along with that great attitude, that just benefits everybody, doesn't it?
See the cars now getting a bit more aggressive. You can see them loading up a little bit more. Farfus looks to the inside. The key is, can you see them? It's really a great day to have a spotter in the stands, Greg, just to give you that information if you can't see someone in the spray. A lot of these cars have their onboard rear view facing cameras, but even that gets blurred by the little eye on the back tail of the cars, and the side view mirrors aren't doing much for you.
Well, we've talked about it over the years too, that, you know, when the real true professionals are lapping somebody, you know, passing somebody or lapping somebody or whatever, you might look and go, why are they so close to that guy? You know, do they really need to be there? Well, all they're doing is making sure that whether it's that rear view mirror, whether it's a side view mirror, or whether it's that camera at the back, that the guy you're passing sees you and knows where you are, unless you don't want to telegraph something. But generally, you want him to know that so that when you make the move, he doesn't turn down on you.
Yeah, that's the key. You just want to have a little bit more awareness around you. The great ones can feel it, but a lot of people just need their attention drawn to it. So fascinating little battle going on here. Cameron's fastest lap was the last one, which is the best of the race so far, at 32.2. About 0.8 quicker than Tomczyk at this stage of the game. But I believe these lap times will continue to come down as like how far can you go before you start to get to the point. 31.7. Typically about an 8 to 10 second range is where you can't really go much quicker on a wet weather tire before it starts to overheat. Compared to a dry time.
Does that window open up a little bit for the two Acuras that we've heard all the drivers saying that they are so good, you know, in damp, you know, slightly wet to damp conditions on the slicks? Does that give them maybe an opportunity to maybe make that stop and change over a couple laps later? And as you just said, that could be up to 15, 16 seconds.
Certainly can, and it's all about execution in one of these races in terms of making the right strategy call. You're trying to get to the finish line first, right? But also risk.
Yes.
If you make that call too early in this 8-hour race and you stick a driver out there on slick tires, and I think ideally if you're going to make that change, you'd keep the same driver in. It's really hard if you throw a new driver out there trying to deal with damp conditions on a slick tire, whereas if someone's in a rhythm, it's an easier adjustment than starting out fresh.
Well, for Jordan Pepper in the Capex Bentley here, he had to do an absolutely mammoth stint on slicks in really wet conditions, and it didn't parlay them into, once everybody cycled through, into a lead, but it's kept them into that top 5. But I think he had to work harder than some of these other guys to be in that top 5, considering how late he stayed out on those slicks.
Yeah, and look, at his best lap time right now is a 33.1 compared to Cameron's 31.7, so 1.4 seconds off. I think the Bentley boys would be pretty happy with that, and I'm not sure if he's had a clear lap. He's had to cut his way through the field, whereas Cameron's had clear sailing at the front. So I think the Bentley camp will be very impressed that their car is this competitive in slicks on a wet racetrack and now on wets, because they thought they would be going backwards here today.
Well, maybe there's something in the wet compounds now that they've been able to find a handle on. It's a new tire for sure that they're running this year in terms of the Pirelli P0 slicks.
The other thing is different racetrack, different tarmac.
Very true. Yeah.
Just the way that interacts with the wet weather tire as well can be a factor in terms of tracks that they visited over in Europe compared to Indianapolis.
Tracks even here in the U.S., this tarmac vastly different than CTMP, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, where they struggled so much a couple of years ago in wet conditions. Cameron's margin with the laps he's been turning in has him up by about 6.5 seconds to Tomczyk. He's got another 3.5 back to Winkelhock.
Look at this drive-through penalty for the 04 car entering a closed pit. Essentially, they brought him in as we were going back to green, as I recall, Greg, and you have to do a lap under green.
Watch it here.
Yeah, and this is when we were going back to green, I believe. So Jeff Brown, who's Colin Brown's dad, is making the strategy call, and it's very tricky when you're interpreting different rule books when you're running different championships. And he obviously believed they could bring him in.
Guys, there's one thing I can add to that conversation. I've been talking with Ben Keating about this, and maybe actually we can speak to Ben here in a second. Yes, we've got Ben Keating here, as a matter of fact. So you guys just got word of the penalty. You were, though, saying that when the pit stop happened, you were at the end of your 65-minute maximum stint length. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand it. I disagree with it. Obviously, the pits were closed at the end of the yellow flag period, but when we pitted, it was green flag. You know, it had already been green flag, and yes, if it's under yellow, you can extend your 65 minutes to 70, but it was green flag. And so we had to come in to not go over our 65 minutes, and I don't know that there's, you know, George is saying the pits were open, so I don't know how in the world we can get a penalty for that.
Yeah, George is George Kurtz. He was the one who started the car. Ben, it's funny, we were talking even before all of this about how crazy this first hour has been. We've seen seemingly everything in that first hour, and here's another wrinkle.
Yeah, it has been crazy. You know, with a window of a pit stop where you can't be, you know, you can be under 74 seconds, but not, but you have to wait until after 112 seconds. That makes it to where you can't change tires and get out quickly. So with the mixed conditions of whether you stay on slicks or stay on rains or whatever, anytime you pit and do a tire change under green flag, you go down a lap. So, you know, that's the situation we have. We're down a lap right now because we came in for rains during green flag racing, and because you're not allowed to leave the pits in less than 112 seconds, you know, we go down a lap.
I think you got a better understanding of these rules than just about anybody else.
Yeah, I don't know about that. They are pretty complicated. You know, it's also really complicated for us because we are one of the few cars that are doing a 3-hour race. You know, the final World Challenge GT America race is the first 3 hours of this 8-hour race. And so while everybody else or most of the other cars are racing for the 8-hour win, we're first racing for a 3-hour win. So our strategy's all mixed up compared to everybody else.
Well, good luck trying to sift through all that between you and Jeff Brown up on the box. You got some good minds to think it through, and you know, we'll watch and see how this penalty resolves itself.
Yeah, thank you very much. It looks like the rain's done, so fingers crossed.
Always good to see you, Ben.
Yeah, talking Jeff Brown and on the 63 team car, Peter Barron. Those are two awfully savvy race strategists up on top of things here, and interesting, a little bit of frustration there, Cal.
Yeah, and I'm just having a quick glance at the sporting regs and about the end of the safety car procedure, and it does not say that you are not allowed to pit on that exact lap. So, you know, the stewards have their interpretation. They have the rule book, and they're certainly more detailed in it than I am. But maybe to Jeff Brown's decision to bring George Kurtz in at that point, green is green, and pit lane was not closed. So I think they've got a genuine concern there and a grievance, but tough to get that reversed in the middle of a race.
Right, and they already just did the drive-through penalty, so it at this stage is what it is. But yeah, that's going to be frustrating, and it's important, I think, to point out there's a difference between pit lane being closed and pit exit being closed. You know, because they'll hold cars at pit exit if the pace car is there, but that doesn't close pit lane completely, I don't believe.
Right.
So maybe that's where some of this confusion is here.
So it's been a crazy first hour and 20 minutes in terms of interpreting what everyone was doing in terms of the strategies, but right now, getting down to basics, Cameron's fastest lap, 131.77, and Farfus just beat that with a 131.73, so the BMW is certainly very effective in these conditions. Now he's looking for water. Look at the different line there. Why is Dane Cameron driving down the right side of the road? To cool off the tires with that standing water. If you continue on the driest part of the racetrack, the tires just continue to build temperature.
Yeah, watch that in the background when Ryan was talking to Ben Keating when they first came, as that car came in, and all of the cars ducking right close to that pit wall. So that process has begun. By the way, leading now in GT4, Nick Whitmer has taken that 438 ST Racing BMW into the lead. Oberlin second for Bimmerworld in the BMW. Andy Lee third now in the Audi for GMG. And Matt Dalton sits fourth in the number 33, Notlad Racing by RS1. Aston Martin, and completing the top 5 in GT4, the number 2 GMG Racing entry of Andrew Davis.
Just getting official word from the steward's office, the pit entry was closed. So that's the reason that they got the drive-through.
There it is, and that's how it sits right now. And up front, Cameron continuing to turn laps, although Tomczak's last lap fair amount quicker. That margin's down a bunch, Cal, down to under 3 seconds.
Some of that may have been traffic, but nonetheless, Tomczak looks very effective right now in terms of his pace. And there's going to be that crossover period where you start to get that dry line, and then these wet weather tires, they're like blocks of tread, and they move around a lot more when you start to get a big load. When you don't have the cornering force in them, it's not such a factor. And here we see once again coming down this front straightaway, Dane Cameron just searching for that wet weather, but that gap at the front is down a little bit further. Tomczak right now is running lap times about 3/4 of a second quicker than Dane Cameron. So the BMW is now into its sweet spot in terms of the car working well in these conditions. As I said before, Martin Tomczak is just an out-and-out racer. Almost 200 DTM starts, and I would say in my experience over in Europe attending races there, half of them seem to be run in conditions exactly like this. So he'll be feeling very much at home there. A little twitch there as he used the curves through that turn 5-6 chicane. Cameron clearing a little bit of GT traffic down into that brake zone. This is the Hulman Boulevard. And he won't be too worried. I mean, I know we're in a race, you want to maintain that position, but it's all about just managing the tires. Don't burn them off. If they're going to try and get you to stay out for your full 65 minutes, there's a long way to go on this stint. We're getting to the point in this race, if you pit right now, you'll be able to do it on 5 more stops to get to the finish. 65-minute stints, times that by 6 is 6.5 hours. The time that you spend on pit lane is not counted either. So they're probably right in that window right now. And that'll be a factor in terms of if they feel the tires are going off, Greg. If they need to make that call, they'll be counting down. What will that do at the end game? How many starts will he have to do to get to the finish from here? If we stay out 10 more minutes, even though the tires are not effective, wow, this is good. Oberlin starting to put the heat on here. This is a battle for the lead in GT4. Whitmer has it aboard the ST Racing BMW. Billy Oberlin wants it.
Yeah, but the unfortunate news is the number 82 BMW for that very short stop is going to be coming in, and the thought process was if the penalty, as Bill takes a look here, and I'm sure Whitmer now has received word, don't fight him, because they're going to have to do, it's not just a drive-through, it's a stop and hold. And that was the debate. If it's a drive-through, you can game the system a little bit because it's a lot less, 51 seconds versus the huge number of 170. But what they're doing now is it's a drive-through, but then they stop them and they hold them during that for the discrepancy in that time. So I guess it's about 90 seconds, 99 seconds total that they're going to be in this drive-through scenario.
I think the hold is for the amount of time that you were short.
Correct.
Plus you're then serving effectively, so you would have had to have paid that price anyway if you'd done it correctly.
Yep.
The penalty is really the time on pit lane, which is 51 seconds.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it here. So obviously Bill was thinking, well, if I can get through, maybe open up a little gap, even building up 3-4 seconds. You can see he makes his way out here, and
the key is nothing to do with how he was released. It's really he just wasn't stationary long enough.
Yeah.
You know, he was doing like an 80-second stop, and he needed to do a 170-second stop.
Well, the reference point there was that 75 Mercedes that was doing it at 112, and Bill came out with them, and it's supposed to be 170 seconds. So here we go. Again, this is going to be a come in and then a hold before he gets released.
Yeah, and I'm curious here. I don't think you can do any normal service. I thought I saw Billy Oberlin looking down and maybe releasing his seatbelts. Let's take a look.
Watch what happens here. Normally you do these hold, you serve your penalty in the pit lane. Well, the thing is if now there's this little wrinkle here, Cal, I think what you can do is if you're going to be in pit lane for a hold, an actual time penalty, I think you can do service, and then maybe when the service is done, you just sit there for the duration of the time penalty. That's a possibility. It's a straight drive-through. You cannot then duck in and get work done on a drive-through. But if it's essentially a time penalty, and if you're saying 99 seconds is what they're saying, then you might be able to stop, do a pit stop, and then just be held for those 99 additional seconds.
Yeah, if I was a competitor, I'd fight that one a little bit, because really, if they needed to do service anyway, there's no penalty. Do you know what I mean? They didn't they're giving up the 99 seconds they would have had to do anyway. They're coming down pit lane and doing service, so there's no delta there in terms of what they're giving up. But here we're looking at the battle for the lead. More importantly, Dane Cameron there just fending off Martin Tomczyk.
Tomczyk working in now. Looking to the outside here. This is the turn 3 and 4, essentially just a long duration double apex right-hander. In dry conditions, it really puts a pasting, I think, on those left front tires in particular. Here's that quick left-right flick through 5 and 6. I really like that part of the track.
I do, and I like the pace that BMW has been very sporty in terms of the straight line speed. Tomczyk flicks down to the inside. That's going to be dicey there as all of the cars get to apex. Dane gets alongside the number 75 Sun Energy Mercedes and clears him, as does Tomczyk, but it was close.
Oh boy, Tomczyk coming across the bows like that. Was not much room.
Dane Cameron is having to slide that Acura a little bit more than the BMW. That seems like it's sticking a little bit better, and that's going to be important. Oh, tire down on the left rear here. Now, I don't want to jump to conclusions too early here, but sometimes if you start to overheat a tire like this, they'll be on wets, and if the track is drying out, and behind the wheel of the 93 right now, it is Trent Hinman still.
Yeah, still Trent.
If you don't start looking for that water to try and cool it down, Greg.
Yep. Well, the bigger concern here is if that tire now comes apart and starts flailing and it rips up bodywork, and it's tough. You've been going so fast for so long to just really slow it down. But if he's got, I'm sure they've got some spotters that maybe not necessarily out around the track, but at least watching the TV feed, and they see that tire starting to come off the carcass flailing like that. You're telling them, slow it down a little bit. I know it's tough, but slow it down.
Long way to go, too. He's just starting sector 2 here down the back stretch.
This is just gutting at this stage.
And he's running at a speed. If that spits out, it'll be fine. But if that continues to flail around and start to rupture bodywork, I can get into brake lines and all sorts of delays potentially going to be on pit lane.
That is a tough go here. And watching the pace we've been seeing from Tomczyk in the attack, and the number 34 Farfus, some of these teams pitted and took on fresh wets a lot later than some of these other drivers, and that's going to give you a little bit more life when things get sketchy as the track starts to dry.
That's a great point, because you remember Cameron, what we thought was the last of the people to make that stop, actually just took just took fuel at that point. So
Exactly.
correct that.
So that's why Cameron might not be quite as quick. Here's a look at this stop. Now watch this here. Yeah, it's fuel only, and they said go. So they did not put on a fresh set of tires, but the Wackenhorst cars did. So that might be part of the difference here. So
certainly Farfus did. I'm not
Yes.
sure on the Tomczyk car, but certainly
Exactly.
Farfus took tires.
Yep.
He currently runs in the 5th position overall in the black BMW. Cameron's still hanging on here, but he's having to use a lot more of the road, and you'll just watch it right here. The car's a little bit more twitchy than the BMW.
What a scrap these two are having at this stage. Coming up on the back now, the number 20 of Max Root.
I think you really got 3 generations of driver almost in this one snapshot. Do you
That's
know what I mean?
amazing,
You got
isn't
young
it?
Max Root, you got Dane Cameron, who's very much in the prime of his career, and Martin Tomczyk, who's still super effective and a monster behind the wheel, but a little bit later in his career.
Yeah, exactly. And even though it's a different class, I think behind them was Bill Oberlin, so you can add that level of experience into the mix.
That's a whole different level.
That's true. He's made it in.
The good news is not a lot of body work, Robin.
No.
They just take one tire. They can do a short stop here. Could take refuel and just replace that left rear. See what they elect to do. They're going all 4. That surprises me.
Maybe are they concerned
Are
about
they just tightening it up? No.
about another tire perhaps coming apart here?
Well, it's the left rear that takes most of the stick. I'll be honest with you, if you're going to do the long stop, change everything.
Well, I just heard somebody yell, let's do all 4. So
Change at the front.
Look at that.
Tomczyk is around Cameron, and now he's trying to put a lap on the 20 Porsche.
More importantly, maybe as well, get that Porsche between himself and Cameron. As well, give himself a little buffer here. Tomczyk now, some clear track. See what he's able to do here.
And at these times, they started to kind of plateau. 31.3 is now 131.3. Jordan Pepper has the fastest lap of this race. So when you got guys of this caliber running this many laps in these conditions, they're not really able to drop it any further. Maybe you get into that crossover point, but you go out on slicks right now, it'd be pretty sketchy to not make a mistake. I think they're going to probably try and exhaust their fuel on board right now and get to the end of this stint. As I mentioned before, 6 hours 30 is safe to do it on 5 more stops to the end.
Cameron is really working hard right now, Cal.
Yeah, he's having to be up on the wheel. But, you know, these drivers, particularly with the success rate that Dane has had in recent seasons, you've got so much confidence. Let's have a look here and see where the pass may have occurred.
What an aggressive move by Tomczyk.
Yeah, he'd been probably thinking about that one for 2 or 3 laps.
Exactly.
Didn't want to give the game away and just slice it down the inside. Just seems like that BMW is carving some of that more low-speed technical stuff a little bit more effectively than the Acura, but could have been they just hit the right spot with the tire pressures.
Yeah. Well, you notice now all these cars, Cal, that are ducking down toward the pit wall, coming down the front straight to try and find moisture. There's not much spray coming off of that section of track either. I would think maybe we're getting relatively close. So we're not seeing a lot of spray coming off tires and the like. Might be in the range here where things are going to change up in fairly short order, and it may be absolutely necessary to make the switch over to those slicks in fairly short order here. Here's a look at Winkelhock, and then the K-Pax Bentley, Continental GT3, K-Pax, and Jordan Pepper.
He's been super impressive.
Oh,
Don't know
yeah.
much about Jordan Pepper. I know he's been doing some great things over in Europe, and he obviously won the Bathurst 12-hour race. But I'm really impressed, and I'm sure the K-Pax squad as well, that this car is just performing in these conditions. They've had pace all weekend long. Just got pipped to the pole by Connor De Filippi. Let's not forget it was Connor De Filippi who put that black BMW on the Porsche here yesterday in the pole shootout. So we've got testimony to his confidence level and speed that he's been showing here on American soil all season long.
The interesting thing with Jordan is you can see he went down and now he's way back up to the outside, trying to figure out what he can do and make some moves. But Jordan, South African, started in the South African VW Cup, then went to Germany for the Scirocco Cup, which is a recognized sort of stepping stone. And that was in 2014. And Cal, then
Move for position down to the inside of Winkelhock. Does he clear him? It's going to be tight there as they get to the chicane. Gives it up.
Yeah, smart move there as well. Boy, that Bentley, though, is really starting to find speed. But it's just amazing how quickly he stepped up into the top tier of the ADAC Masters Championship. But everybody clearly recognized that young man's speed and racecraft, and he has lived up to every ounce of that billing.
His dad did some racing. I believe his sister races as well. So it's a racing family. And really impressed with what he's done here this weekend.
Yeah, just superb. 24 years old. A long career in front of him. Yeah, Max Root doing a pretty good job here of keeping Winkelhock behind him.
He is, and that was late. That was super late.
As I say that.
Wow.
Well, Max running a little wide as a result.
That's an aggressive move in the second hour of an 8-hour race. But I love it.
Like I said, there's not a lot of difference between lap times here and race trim. Going flat out these days.
See how the water just accumulates up against the walls that outline this front stretch here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So the driver's still trying to cool them down. The tires just giving a big sigh of relief when you find that puddle. Like, thank you, thank you.
You can almost hear the hiss as that heat dissipates out. Gotta admit that Bentley's a nice sounding car too.
Oh, it's beautiful. Beautiful. Reminds me when I drove for Roush at Daytona, and you could wake up in the middle of the night taking your break, taking your nap, and you knew if you were still running because you could hear it amongst the 60 or so cars that were competing.
Winkelhock and the little twitch there, just getting the rotation, pushing for times. We're still seeing lap times nobody's really even approached anything in the high 120s at this stage. So.
Just plateaued there.
Yeah.
So 131, 132. Fastest lap still to Pepper at 131.3. Tomczyk just ran a 131.8 on the last lap. Cameron about 2 to 3 tenths slower. So just seems like the Acura doesn't quite have the bite right now compared to the BMW. But the real key phase is going to be that crossover period where Renger van der Sande said that that Acura performs very well. And then when we get to perfectly dry conditions, which we're anticipating here over the next hour or so,
you can see
who has the edge then. Look at the two different lines. They're both running in the water, then switching back across.
You can see right on line, and it's starting to look to me, Cal, like that line is pretty dry.
Yeah, I think when these drivers get to the end of this fuel stint, they'll definitely want to go to slicks. There's no way they're going to be able to hang on, I don't think, if we don't see any further rain, to another full stint on wet weather tires. So even though it may be a bit sketchy for the first 10-15 minutes.
Right.
As you get deeper into that, whatever stint it may be, and we're several pit stops behind some of these cars right now, 3 for a lot of them already. We expect to see the track dry out and the wet tire will just not survive or be effective in terms of lap times.
Ooh, Andrew Davis there, big twitch in that number 2 GMG Racing Porsche. He was trying to hustle through 8, 9, and 10 in front of Jordan Pepper. Got away with it.
Just getting a bit of clarification on that situation with the 04 pitting under a closed pit. Essentially what happened, we had the number 1 car of Alessandro Balzan as the leader. He elected to make a pit stop. And if you're trying to find the new leader each time and everyone keeps coming in, the stewards had the right to close the pit lane. They made that call. Pit lane was only closed for about 4 seconds. They had made that radio message to all of the teams at exactly the time that they elected to bring George Kurtz in at pit lane.
Oh, just an absolute case of unfortunate timing. And we had a meeting close for Winkelhock. Well, he takes no prisoners, does he? A meeting about all of these rules, and they did clearly mention that we reserve that option. And the problem is if you get, like you said, if leaders keep cycling in, you can just sit under caution for forever.
Right.
And nobody wants that, so yeah, good call here.
Winkelhock has a remarkable achievement to his name where he led his one and only Grand Prix. Which is pretty cool.
That is very cool. Just to have an actual Grand Prix on your...
Son of Manfred Winkelhock and nephew of Joachim, and 2 great races themselves. Spent 5 years in the DTM back in 04, and then from 07 through 10. And he was the FI GT1 champ back in 2012 and won this championship as he now hits pit lane in 2017.
Well, you wonder if he's awfully quick and aggressive in the wet. I wonder if he's going to be the first one to say, let's try the slicks. Sort of the first penguin into the shark-infested waters here.
Yep, and again, they may be factoring in, okay, if we stop now, we can do an X amount more stops. They're seeing that there's the crossover. If he's really feeling like, hey, we're starting to overheat these tires, could get to the point where we may have a tire go down. I believe that's Spencer Pumpelly jumping in. Spencer runs with the Hardpoint Racing team here in the United States, so very integral in Rob Ferriel, who's the team principal, and he co-drives with him in a couple of other championships. Teams are putting this program together. Hardpoint providing all of the logistical backup for this weekend. WRT over here with their crew, but this car was in fact shipped from Europe. It was not the car that Hardpoint had been running here. They actually had an incident last weekend at Mid-Ohio, so it's a bit of damage to that car, and they're in the middle of a busy stretch as well. So just too much risk to commit to running this event and being able to complete their own championship.
You can see slicks going on board that Audi as well. Down off the jacks. You can't restart the car until the car is down on the ground, wheels are in contact with the ground. You can see it lost a second or two just in wheel spin there. And this is where he's got to be so mega careful, especially coming off of that rev limiter.
This is where I'd love to see the onboard of this man behind the wheel.
Yes.
The man, Manfred, behind the wheel. Marcus, excuse me. Yeah, this is going to be sketchy. I mean, tires will come out of the blankets. They'll have as much temperature as they can put in them. And the key is you need to start to load that tire. So you want to be careful as Cameron now making the same call. Fuel going in.
It'll be interesting to see here the dynamic. They go to the slicks and they say this car is so good in the damp conditions on slicks.
Cameron jumping out. Mega stint by him, no mistakes. So easy to overshoot or make a critical error. He's loving this opportunity to get behind the wheel of this GT3 Acura NSX once again. He had 7 victories last year with the real-time racing program. Missed out on the championship, really with a technicality in terms of the Pro-Am championship. He had more points than the Kyle Marcelli-Martin Barkey combination, but because he had had 2 different partners along the way with Brett Curtis and Mike Headland, there was a rule in place that the Pro and Pro-Am lineup cannot secure a title with a different partner.
Right.
But he had 7 wins and certainly can get the job done.
He can indeed, and no, it's just a great season, and it was unfortunate, but I think that regulation is if you find yourself alone in a points position and you're a pro in a Pro-Am combo, you just suddenly kind of become invisible in that points order. But his performances were extremely visible.
Yeah, I think they probably sell my trophies on my shelf on it.
Exactly. Exactly. May I turn your attention to this, please? Exactly. And
ladies and gentlemen. Whoa, there you go.
Winkelhock is just pitching it.
Well, actually, it's Pumpelly, right?
Oh, that's Pumpelly now. Yep. Yeah, that's right. Winkelhock got out. So Spencer up on the. It's going to be interesting to see what these times start to show here.
A little bit of a mental block there. Pumpelly jumping in to take over from Marcus.
Marcus was in the car for so long.
Yesterday, right down into this brake zone is where So Spencer got a penalty, came down in this brake zone side by side by Rob Liddell, thought he'd cleared him and then moved up on him and put the number 2 GMG Porsche into the wall. They had to do a switch to their backup car because of that, and ultimately it gave him that 5-spot penalty. You can see he is really arms and elbows here, just trying to keep this car on the racetrack. Farfus gets a run on him. Farfus currently in third. He'll just leapfrog over that chicane to make the move. Just touch the curves, probably okay with that. A little bit of damage there on that right rear bodywork.
Well, in the spots on the track here, I mean, there are sections where that line is still fairly damp. There's other spots where it's very obviously drier, and so I think this is where you get that sort of a mix a little bit. Somebody on wets is going to be quicker in certain parts of the track, and somebody on slicks might be quicker in others here. Just kind of watching for these times here.
Pepper just laid down fastest lap of the race, still not in the 130 range, 131.078.
He is flying.
So now we'll start to see when Spencer Pumpelly's times start to drop. As soon as he starts to get some load in those tires and get some grip, we'll see where the crossover period is. And all of the other teams up and down pit lane will be looking at those two tires. They'll be looking, okay, who's fastest on wets, guys on slicks, when do we see that crossover? As soon as they see it, then they'll make the decision.
Boy, Pepper runs all the way out to the edge of the track and past even.
Millimeter
in turn
perfect
7.
there.
Yeah, just precision personified here. Keeping an eye on those times.
I tell you, we talk about the Bentley boys being pleased with their performance. I think they'll be pleased, in fact, when we head off to the 24 Hours of Spa at the end of this month. Typically it rains. And the fact that this car is performing so well in these conditions, I think will give them a lot of optimism for the Blue Ribbon event at the end of this month.
Yeah, I think they're going to be absolutely delighted here. When Jordan here has just put in some mega stints already. Maximum time a driver can
There we
stay.
go. He did it, 130.8.
Maximum time a driver can spend in the car consecutively is 3 hours.
Yeah, that's correct.
So
Can be extended on that final stop if you're under caution by 5 minutes, which Ben Keating was talking about.
but still has time, of course, before we get to that 3 hour mark, but interesting to see how long he certainly seems to be in a really good flow. And that's sort of an interesting dynamic. 3 drivers can each drive 3 hours, so that's 9. So do you have one driver just put their 3 in and then they're done and just cycle through the others? I mean, there's lots of strategy options to play.
There are.
And as far as K-Pax is concerned, guys, I can say that is not what they're going to do. They've got Jules Gounon already with his helmet on. He is waiting. Darren Law told me a moment ago they are pretty close to coming in, and he said it's a no-brainer to go to slicks at this point. But believe it or not, it has started raining again. Not very much, but just a little bit. And what a busy time this has been for Gounon here recently. He raced in the 24 Hours of Le Mans 2 weeks ago. Last week he did 2 GT World Challenge Europe races on the Saturday in the Netherlands before getting on a helicopter and flying to the Nürburgring and doing the Nürburgring 24, and now he's here. And he's been on the racetrack like 7 of the last 8 weeks or something like that. It's a really remarkable streak that he's got going on, and he's about ready to get in to the Bentley. But I must say, the rain is starting to pick up.
Well, and I'll tell you, watching here for Farnbacher, he is really struggling, Cal.
Yeah, he's twitchy, but that's just the difference right now. There's a slight edge, obviously, with the wet weather tired runners. See there, Farfus squeaking by him and stretching it out immediately. And I tell you what, you talk about doing a triple stint, Greg. The mental exhaustion with these conditions is as much as the physical. I mean, it's relatively cold, so it's really not a hot day to deal with inside the cockpit, but the mental exhaustion of being up on the wheel and making the right decisions, and every corner's a little bit different. And Ryan called it, look at the rain on this front straightaway. Where did this come from? So I want my money back on my weather app.
Yeah, absolutely. On 2 or 3 of them, as they were saying, light rain was just going to be here briefly and go, and right as it looked like things were improving, it picks up once again. And for our Farnbacher and Pumpelly, looking at their lap times, the last lap, Cal, a 1:42.6 for Farnbacher, a 44, mid-44 for Pumpelly, while everybody else was still running in those 1:31s. But now with this picking up again, it's going to change the entire dynamic once again. I think that was Nick Yaloli getting kitted up and ready to go. He will be taking over for Martin Tomczyk. And we are starting to see that spray now off of those tires in some earnest again, Cal. Yeah, you can. It is really starting to come down a little bit.
Yeah,
Wow.
so sometimes it's just the way the luck goes. So BMW electing to keep their cars out, which have been very effective in these drying conditions. Then you have other teams thinking, okay, now's the crossover period. Like the Hardpoint Racing Audi with Pumpelly behind the wheel. Cameron came in, Farnbacher out there struggling, and then the rain comes once again. Is Jan Halen jumping in? He was actually the fastest man in the qualifying, the 3-sector qualifying session here yesterday, Greg. Really impressive. He had a fast time of 1:22.9, right?
Yeah, he's been excellent, and he's really been a secret weapon for this Wright team in the car here this year. Behind the scenes for several years, he's been working as a driver coach, including working with Fred Pourdad and Max Root as co-drivers here this weekend. You couldn't take the grin off his face, I think, earlier, though, when I was talking with him about how things were going. Interesting here because they have to come in. The rain is picking up. What do you do? And they went with wet tires, it appears, here from the Wright Motorsports Porsche. This is a really difficult call, trying to figure out what's the best way forward in these conditions because they are so variable. Clean pit stop here for the Wright Motorsports crew. They'll be sending Jan Halen back out here shortly.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about the timing and how things flip and flop just a little bit for Pumpelly and for Farnbacher, putting on the slicks, then the rain picks up, the 20 waiting just a little bit, and coming in and making this change and being able to go to rains for the conditions here is going to be big. They're down a little bit here, so they need to work some strategy and make their way working up here. And watching here, watch the Audi right now in the hands of Spencer Pumpelly and on these slicks. And right now, in this wet conditions, these GT4 cars on the wet tires actually have more grip and more speed through some of the twisty bits of the track. And that's one of the interesting developments when you design and build a car, as these GT3 machines are done, with a big dependence on a lot of downforce, on a lot of aero on the car. When you're not going fast enough to be able to get into that aero, which sometimes happens here in the twisty bits of the track, but the cars don't have a large amount of natural mechanical grip that you need. And so some of these GT4 cars that have a little bit more mechanical grip, more roll, and here we go, the tipping point. Pumpelly bringing it in and going, we got to make the change, as does Mario Farnbacher, and he brings the number 30 Acura NSX in, certainly to go to the reins as well. And here we go, Tomczyk is out, and Nick Yaloli climbing on board, the number 35 Wackenhorst BMW. You can be sure it's going to be interesting to see here if they're planning on doing anything with tires. They don't have tires on the wall, so fuel and driver change, they can get this done, and up to one tire. Sounds like just watching this, because if they get this done in the short window, get out, make sure they're under 74 seconds. And into the lead now is Farfus at this stage. Pepper's into the pits as well. So yes, Farfus in the number 34 Wackenhorst BMW will pick up the lead at this stage. And it looks like Fuentes might cycle through. Be up now into the top 3 overall, leading in the Pro-Am category as we watch this stop.
I think equally importantly for Fuentes, Greg, they're getting very close to what would be 70% of that 3-hour mark where they'll secure points, and that's all they need to do to secure the title.
And guys, that Quadricorsa Ferrari is due in about 9 or 10 laps, according to Gregory Romanelli. That's their plan. They're just waiting as long as they can to try and make the best decision possible. K-Pax brought their Bentley in a moment ago, and they had to change their strategy because of the weather. They said, no sense in going to slicks. We're going to go with the short stop, just a fuel fill, no driver change, no tire change. Right back out on the same set of wet Pirelli P0s that Jordan Pepper has been running for quite some time at this point.
Well, and that's going to be the real key, I think, to success in this race, is that ability to, on the fly in very short segments of time, Cal, be able to decide in these conditions, what do we want to do? Do we need to go long and do everything? Do we need to go short, modify it? What are we going to do to maximize other performance right now? Those on-the-fly adjustments are, I think, they're going to be really crucial in this race.
I think the real key, Greg, is that, you know, maximum time on the short stop of 73.99 seconds is really tight to get a 4-tire change done. So say suddenly you just have the weather change, you're already pretty much full on fuel, you'd like to do a 4-tire change. Getting one done in under 23 seconds is awfully tough. 2 mechanics, 1 gun. 20 is a good one, so you don't have much fudge factor there.
Number 75 has been right up at the sharp end of things for this entire race. In again.
Great performance by this group, really kept it nice and clean, made that strategy call to bring the car in on the reconnaissance laps and switch to wet weather tires. I think they were unsure of the rule. We believe they could have done a short stop and just got him back out there because the rules weren't in play until the green flag starts, but did a long stop. There's Martin Tomczyk debriefing with the Valkenhorst group. Great stint by Martin, as you would expect. I mean, he is a great racer. He likes these conditions. He's used to them.
Well, as a driver, one of the things you love is challenge. And boy, these conditions fulfill that. And that team is just so sharp. Executes so beautifully here. All right, down off the jacks. Driver is buttoned in. Car starts, but that was interesting. Starts and leaves almost immediately, which can mean that it wasn't a particularly quick stop. And Kenny Habul, team principal, on board.
Won an IGTC title back in 2018, the bronze division. Great racer, loves his motorsports, very successful businessman, obviously. Should be Shelby Blackstock now getting his
pole position for Academy Motorsports. Slightly trying time for that team in race 1. They'd like to bounce back with a win in race 2. They'd like to bounce back with a win in race 2. They'd like to bounce back with a win in race 2.
Farnbacher out there. They're now showing 4 stops for Farnbacher, so I believe he's been in and probably switched back to wets. Here's the other Acura NSX. Should be Shelby Blackstock now getting his seat time for the day. Within that first 3 hours, both of your regular season pilots, if you're trying to go for the 3-hour points for GT World Challenge America, have to take seat time in the first 3 hours, so Hinman did a double. Now Shelby, who's really quick yesterday in qualifying, within a few tenths of his teammates, so he's really come a long ways this year.
He's coming out in about as sketchy of conditions as you could imagine here at this stage. But he has just been absolutely rock solid. Everything we've seen this year. Here are our two protagonists, fairly close to each other on track right now. Difference is the number 1 at Fuentes there, the Hublot Ferrari, is up in 4th overall at this stage, and the 04 is actually in the 5th overall spot, but second in class, but is down a lap at this stage.
Yeah, he's essentially down a lap to this number 1 car and the overall leader. So he's just on the same lap as the 1 car. I know that sounds confusing, but he's down a lap to the leaders who are ahead of them right now, and he's almost down a lap to the number 1 car. But the real key is that championship at 3 hours. They just do a few more laps here, as Ryan Marine alluded to. They will secure the title by sufficing the minimum drive time and scoring points. They only need 1.
They are obviously, it's been amazing. They're obviously executing with a certain amount of conservativeness and caution, and yet they are right up in the top 5 overall here. So they've just been playing their cards beautifully.
They have. It's going to be fun to watch Mark Issa join the 2 drivers we've seen in action so far today, Martin Fuentes and Alessandro Balzan. It's a great little team. Really done an awesome job this year. I mean, they've had the ability sometimes, Greg, to show up on a race weekend. The car's rolled off the trailer with a great setup. They've got the experience and engineering skill set on that group to make the right changes and get it into the window.
Well, and speaking of some changes, we are going to be joining the American CBS Sports Network here at the very top of the hour, just in about 30 seconds. And so we will continue here on the stream as well. But if you want to watch on CBS Sports Network, you are more than welcome to do that as well. So as we prepare here to make this switch over, we're just going to pause for a second, and we'll be back with you in about 15 seconds. Just 5 miles west of downtown Indianapolis lies an intersection of legends, 16th and Georgetown. It lies at the southwest corner of the famed Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where for over 100 years, legends have been made. And over the years, it has also hosted many of the world's top racing series, and this weekend it welcomes for the first time the only true global GT championship. Welcome to round 2 of SRO's Intercontinental GT Challenge, powered by Pirelli, the inaugural Indianapolis 8 Hours. Hi everybody, I'm Greg Creamer, joined by Calvin Fish and Ryan Marine. We join the race in progress. 2 of the 8 hours have been completed. And Cal, we're going to take a look back here at some of the moments in these first couple hours of this race. And obviously lots of fanfare as everything getting ready to go here at the legendary Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Your engines!
And that was AWS and CrowdStrike CJ Moses starting this field off and on their way. The big story, Cal, was as this field came up to green, a couple of cars playing some strategy moves, but the other thing was it started to rain.
Started to rain, and it wasn't just a miss. Look at this as we see the American flag wave for the start of this race, and the rain is pouring down on this front straightaway. Augusto Farfus from the lead takes the car to pit lane, along with his teammate Martin Tomczyk, making that call for wets early. Dane Cameron then led for Acura in the NSX in atrocious conditions. Looked like it was going to be the right call. We thought the rain would only be for a few moments, but later on they had to bring him into the pits as well to switch him to the wet weather Pirelli tires.
Yeah, every time it looked like it was going to abate a little bit, it would pick back up again, and it has kept these teams on their toes for sure. And for Jordan Pepper, he put in a massive stint on slicks in the wet conditions, but it got so wet. Big moment here for the Vital Speed Ferrari. Looked like he got away with it, and then Trevor, it just hooked up, got into the wall, and looks like at this point their day might be done.
Yeah, Rich Beck there just got caught out by the big puddling there through 13 and 14, and then it was all about strategy. What do? Do you keep on the slicks? Do you put wets on? A lot of top-ups for fuel to try and reset the driving parameters here. 65 minutes is the maximum drive stint time. And a lot of the teams electing to do that short stop, and we'll get into these pit stop regulations a bit more as we progress here. Top up with fuel and also extend that drive stint time.
That just opens up your strategic opportunities. We went back to green with the GT4 car leading the field, leading the GT4 class. Matt Dalton in the Notland Racing by RS1 Aston Martin, but quickly you can see some of the GT3 machinery. And then coming out of pit lane, the 17 Racers Group, LaSalle Fast Life TV, Porsche right in the mix of a throng of cars coming up here. And then maybe going a little bit too long in some used and hot, wet tires. Tire let go here on the number 93 Acura.
Yeah, Trent Hinman behind the wheel, and then that was a battle at the front. Dane Cameron trying to hang on. Martin Tomczyk slices to the inside and grabs the lead for BMW.
Absolute classic move and a great execution down into turn number 13. And through this long 14, then a couple of teams, including the number 31 Audi Sport Team Hardpoint by WRT Audi, ducking in, Cal, opting to go to slicks. Looked at the moment like this could be the right play.
This was the crossover time. Suddenly the slick runners were looking good, but then just as we say that, it starts to rain again, and everyone's back in and putting wet weather tires back on.
Yeah, the times never really got down to where you would have expected, and so that's how it played out. And at the end of all of that activity now, as we start into our third hour of competition, it is the number 34 Wackenhorst BMW in the hands of Augusto Farfus, who has just been mega here in these opening 2 hours and 5 minutes or so, and leading at this stage rather comfortably over the Capex Bentley.
Yeah, the BMW's been very effective here this weekend. Connor De Filippi put the car on the pole yesterday in the pole shootout with this very machine. Augusto Farfus taking the controls early, and he is really a magician in the rain. He won a brilliant race at Daytona, the 24-hour in 2019 in simply atrocious conditions, so he's the smart and wise decision to put him behind the wheel in anticipated rainy conditions. But no one thought that it would rain this hard and for this long. And for this team, well, they're on the verge of clinching the GT World Challenge America title. There are points scored at the end of 3 hours here, so you can see we're into hour 3 now, but to score points you just do 70%, and they're close to that mark, and that would seal the deal.
So another championship in the works for Martin Fuentes, who has had a number of AM category championships. This year the team moving to Pro-Am, and boy, I'll tell you, he has delivered in that category as well. Do have to pay tribute, his full season teammate Rodrigo Baptista not able to run here this weekend, an able substitute in Alessandro Balsan, but it's really a shame in many ways that Rodrigo won't be able to share in this championship should they absolutely clinch it.
A short stop routine here. Getting in the pit stop regulation to run down pit lane costs you 51 seconds. And if you want to do a short stop, you're only allowed to be on pit lane for 73.99. So 74 is longer, that's the no-go land. So there's a possibility of doing 4 tire change. You can't take fuel if you do all 4 tires, or you can just simply top up with fuel. And that's what they've done with Augusto Farfus. Now, we know he's got to be in by the time we get to 5 hours to go, because the maximum stint length continuous for a driver is 3 hours.
Very good point here. And interestingly, you can do actually on that short stop, you can do fuel and 1 tire. But if you do 1 tire, generally that just upsets the balance of the car hugely, doesn't it?
It typically could if you had a cut down tire, for example, like so with him, and they were kind of a little bit of confusion during that pit stop. We didn't just see it there, but they were thinking about maybe just doing 1 tire and sending him quickly, then elected to do all 4 ultimately.
Quick shot there for a moment of James Clay in the GT4 class leading number 82 BMW, and now Fuentes is in, and this is a full service stop, it looks like. All 4 tires and fuel for the Hublot Ferrari as they continue their quest for a championship here in North America. That championship, of course, would be in the Pro-Am category, the GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. Looked like there was a real rush to get that last tire on, and the minute it was on, that car came down and dropped off the jacks. So I don't know whether they were up against the time here or not. You always have that concern, and the strategist really looking at things, and it's a huge penalty if you end up in that nether zone of 84 to 112 seconds, if you're trying to do a short stop or you run short of the 112, if you're trying to do the long stop, here's a look at the number 7 now of Jordan Pepper after the stop by Farfus into the lead in the K-Pax Bentley.
He's been mega.
He truly has.
Absolutely mega here today. Everyone believed, including the team themselves, that the Bentley would struggle in wet conditions. He was awesome on slick tires, and when they did make the switch to wet weather tires, he had pace as well. And when we look ahead to this season, Greg, this is round 2 of this global championship. The Blue Ribbon event is the next one on the calendar in 3 weeks' time at Spa-Francorchamps. It always rains in Spa, it seems. So for the Bentley squad, there's good news today, and maybe even better news when they hit Belgium in a few weeks' time.
And look at that little bit of a wiggle here for Alessandro Balzan, who has taken over for Fuentes. I'll tell you, he is a pilot of great experience, a hugely sought after coach, and had to take a little bit of a break from racing for a while. Had some medical issues that prevented him from driving, but even so, he was incredibly busy coaching for the Scuderia Corsa program and Ferrari Challenge and private clients as well, but got behind the wheel. There wasn't much rust to fall off.
No, he did a couple of, I think, Italian GT races late last year, and then we saw him in our Vegas finale. And he's just a great little guy. I give him grief about his stature and his height, but when you get him behind the wheel,
that's interesting as well, certainly.
I tell him he can pack a lot more in an overhead bin in his suitcase. He doesn't have to fold his pants.
Oh, that's brutal, but funny. Boy, you get that helmet on, he can wield a race car around a racetrack. And again, now, he is considered the second driver in that North American World Challenge GT America Pro-Am pairing, replacing Baptista. So in that first 3 hours, only the 2 drivers in the North American Championship can drive, and he is nominated as one of those drivers. So he is part of the program, and he is on the wheel and up on it in a hurry here, heading into turn 7 at Indianapolis. The number 1 Hublot Ferrari continues its quest to bring a championship to Martin Fuentes here in the GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS segment of this race. And Alessandro Balzan is up on it here. And of course, Ryan Marine covering all the action for us down in pit lane. And Ryan, what's the latest?
Well, I found Martin Fuentes, who just got out of that car. We're both looking at the clock. We're trying to do the math. When do we reach that 70% mark? If we're not there, we're close. I think we can say that. I know you want this championship. You've worked hard for it all season. What would it mean to clinch it here at Indianapolis?
It definitely would be my highlight of my career, you know. I've been racing for a while, and I think that to win the biggest championship I would ever win. So I'm excited. We're focusing right now on the championship and then keep going for the 8 hours.
Conditions on the track, they seem so variable. How difficult was that?
I mean, we didn't know if we should go into pits and change the tires, and the engineer said, Martin, we're expecting rain in the next 10 minutes. Can you hold on? And the tire pressure of my rears were extremely high. I'm like, they're gonna blow. So there was no water in the track. So actually, the circumstances were the hardest I've ever driven as well. So it's pretty challenging circumstances.
Alessandro just got in the car. The team just did the full service. They put wets on the car. How close is the track from switching back to being ready for slicks?
It was a coin toss. Yeah. They asked me, how's the track? I'm like, I can't say. It's not dry, it's not wet. So check the weather, check the weather, and you call it. You call the shot. So we're just hoping they get it right.
Good luck.
Well, we're watching Alessandro Balzan here in that number 1 Hublot Ferrari, and it looks like he's taking a little bit of risk on occasions here as he's juking and jiving, trying to figure a way by that number 93. And it all comes down to 70%. But let's explain for the viewer what's going on here. 3 cars at the start of this race we're still in the running here in the North American GT World Challenge America powered by AWS Championship. 2 of them in Pro-Am, and that number 1 Ferrari is one of those cars. The first 3 hours, right, are going to conclude that championship, and that's why they're running a strategy for 3 hours that's maybe a little different than they would for the rest of the race.
Yeah, just backing up with the COVID situation, we had an event canceled in Canada at CTMP Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. 2 90-minute events should have occurred there. They've rolled that into a 3-hour event that rolls into this 8 hours. So the first 3 hours of this race, at the 3-hour point, they're not going to pull off and finish their race, then they'll continue for the full 8 hours, but points will be awarded in the GT World Challenge America Championship. Now, this number 1 car is a 49-point lead. There's 50 points for winners. We see the other car involved in that championship, the 04, having a quick spin here.
That was Colin Brown. He's gathered it up again, but
yeah, I think he must be on slicks, maybe just trying to keep the car together, and maybe we're not quite at that point. As Martin said, it was a coin flip, but just getting back and finishing off the story there. Points are awarded at 3 hours. To be allocated points, you have to complete 70% of the distance as Colin is fighting that car, and that's just after 2 hours with the wet weather and the slow running behind the caution. It's done on laps, not on time, so they're going to want to try and be safe, but that was really the first goal, the first box to be checked for that number 1 team, was getting safely through the first 70% of the first 3 hours of this race.
That one team came in here with a 49-point lead, and so they really only needed to earn 1 point, and if they hit that 70% as Balzan slices through with only 2 cars eligible in the category in this race, they're going to get a lot more than that. So that's where that 70%, once they hit that, they're champion, and then they can go and run here right now. And you can see Colin Brown right there, that car dancing and skating, clearly running on slicks at this stage. He's just staying in that dry line while others continue that search for some wet conditions to cool off these wet weather tires.
Yeah, and I actually saw Mario Farnbacher in his number 30 Acura NSX driving right off the racetrack down Holman Boulevard. He had his left sides completely off, keeping the right sides just on the right side of the white line, so he's not exceeding track limits. Conversely, Colin Brown is looking for every dry patch he can find. Let's see if Mario does it here. See it right there. Yep. He's running all the way down. There's a little bit more water. And that's kind of teaching Alessandro Balzan as well. You can see the spray. Then he flicks over to the other side. Meanwhile, Colin Brown down the middle of the road, he wants to try and keep the temperature in his tires. So with that wet weather tire, has those tread blocks, and when it starts to dry out, it'll start to overheat. Looking at the fastest speed straps on the straightaway here with Race Vision powered by AWS. That's done right at the brakes for turn 1. BMW so strong in every sector here this weekend, but they've got the speed down the straightaways. They've been fast through the corners. They've also been late on the brakes, and we'll look at some of that information a little bit later in the show.
Yeah, absolutely. This Race Vision powered by AWS, it's being developed on the fly here. It's sort of in its beta stage, so every once in a while we'll get a little bit of data that you have to think about, but again, it's just remarkable technology driven by AWS, such a great partner to this championship, and it takes this data up into the AWS cloud, and then it's manipulated by various elements in the cloud to set it up in this format, connects it to these great graphics, and down it comes, and we get these views. We have fastest speed on the straight, as you said, fastest speed in the S's, and latest on the brakes are some of the dynamics that we'll be seeing. And again, keep in mind that it is being developed sort of live on the fly here as this unfolds, but boy, what great data and what great potential.
It's awesome stuff. It's great information for us and for the viewers. Here's the fastest corner speed through that little chicane there. Audi right now holds the top spot along with Dane Cameron in the Acura. You see the BMWs though, they're in the mix everywhere around this race circuit. They may be tough to beat here today. I thought Martin Fuentes brought up a very good point, Greg, in terms of we talk about performance. We're looking at lap times. What are the guys doing on wet weather tires versus dry? When is that crossover period? Even if the wet tires are giving you good performance, you've got to be concerned about overheating. So if you're running a long stint on wet tires with a drying line, you get a lot of load through 12 and 13 coming through that third sector. Got to be thinking about that.
Well, and that of course comes down to he talked about the pressure in my rears was getting way too high. Well, that's driven by temperature, and the higher the temperature, the more pressure builds inside those tires, and that's why you've got such concern, especially in these changing conditions. Boy, and tire issue, it looks like left rear for Spencer Pumpelly in that 31 Audi Sport Team Hardpoint by WRT entry.
That's what we're talking about.
Yep.
You know, as it starts to dry out, just the tire temp is at a really high point. Then when you start to load it through some of the faster left-hand corners.
Spencer was he was turning some really good laps. He found his groove, was down into the 131s. and really starting to find it a little bit. And there's always the issue as well. We've seen some of the cars that have gone way off track, just keeping one set of tires on that white line. Sometimes off track. You know, there's been incidents earlier in the weekend. Little shards could be sitting out there. He can. It could also be just a cut.
It's like when you drive your own car on the streets and you sort of like cut across maybe a median because you miss your turn. That's where all the garbage is.
That's where you pick up the nails and the like. So, and in this case, you could be talking about carbon fiber shards and the like here. It's interesting. There's a little bit of damage to the right rear corner of that car. Minimal.
Yeah, we've been seeing that for a while. I think that was during the early laps where it got a little bit tight in traffic.
Just don't want
Not too bad here. He was kind of 2/3 of the way around the lap when it suddenly let go. So be somewhat less destructive in terms of the track position. And you can see it hasn't gone down completely.
No. What I was getting at, the last thing you want with that damage on that one side, you don't want that tire to come apart, damage the other side as well, and really affect the aero at the back.
To say that now is completely apart. So.
Yeah. May have been that centrifugal force just sort of keeping it up a little bit, but
look at the vibration that it shakes through the back of the car.
There's
the immediate destruction it can do to bodywork and brake lines there in that right rear corner, but also the vibration can shake other stuff.
Ryan?
Yeah, taking a look at that bodywork, it doesn't seem overly significant. They're doing the fuel here first. That's step number one. Anytime you're going to do a significant tire change, you're going to do that fuel first per the rules. Interesting choice here that they will go to the slick tires here for this Audi.
Well, I think the tire may be that left rear situation may be pushing them into that decision, even if Spencer says wet tires are still effective. They've just got to play it safe. Because if there's no more rain, another 10-15 minutes, you'll be coming down pit lane once again.
So trying to figure the strategy out, make it work to what the mechanicals on the car and on the ground are offering to you here. And boy, did they get that stop done in a hurry. They just get to sit and wait, and he's away. Spencer Pumpelly into the pits. The problem with the left rear corner, a cut tire, came down into the pits, and the team has done the refueling, full tire change, and he is back out. Watch it right here, Cal, that left rear corner.
Yeah, he's already lifted off. He could feel something, maybe a vibration. Jordan Pepper just darts around him, and then it's all about just keeping this car under control. He's basically 2/3 of the way around the lap, so it was minimal damage in terms of costing him time getting back to the pit lane. And they've put him on slicks now, so forcing the issue a little bit. They'd like to have stayed on that wet weather tire, and again, we were relating to the fact that, okay, maybe the wet weather tire is effective in terms of lap time, in terms of the crossover where the slick is more effective, but you've got to factor in those tire temperatures screaming up and giving you potential failure.
Yeah, we talked about it, the temperature directly relates to pressure in those tires. And I don't know, once again, we're at that point where there's an awful lot of fairly dryish line here. So I think it might be getting into that window once again to really consider the slicks. Certainly the number 7 of Jordan Pepper, who has just been putting in a mega drive today. Up on the wheel in wet conditions on slicks early. Hasn't missed a beat when they've gone to wets, and finds himself leading.
And he started this race, Greg, so he's nearly 2.5 hours into this stint. And I tell you what, you talk about race car drivers, cockpit temperatures. It's a relatively cool weekend here in Indianapolis, but the mental exhaustion in these slick and drying conditions is immense.
There's the car currently sitting 3rd in the category, the number 35, now in the hands of Nick Ialoli, one of the 2 Wackenhorst team BMWs, and a little bit of an off-course excursion there for Nick.
He's coming off a Nürburgring 24-hour race, and there you can see with the dirt on the tires and the wet, just sliding it around a little bit. So very much on a high. Team there with a couple of guys, one of whom's Nicky Katzberg, who shares the other BMW here this weekend. So we talk about the COVID situation. It's compressed a lot of race schedules, so a lot of these top-notch sports car drivers have been very busy of late.
Yeah, hugely busy, not seeing home for a long time as Kenny Habul brings the Sun Energy 1 Mercedes-AMG GT3 in. They too, Cal, opting to go for slicks.
And scuffs. I think that's the important. Thinking about the weather here today, the team teams are prepped. They may have scuffed some of the, they get 12 sets of tires for the complete weekend, including free practice and qualifying. If you make the pole shootout, you get an additional set. You have to hand one U set back. Some strategy there. Flat tire again, I believe.
Yep.
Left rear, that's the one that's getting loaded. That's the problem area.
This is the second one for this car.
And I think if I'm making a call for any of the other competitors out there, they're seeing that occur. Now, it can be down to your car setup, what you're running in terms of rear camber and the like, but nonetheless, it's certainly a big signal as we now see the 7 car slowing.
Oh, the number
Was there an
3.
incident between the 3 and the 7? 7 accelerating away from the same area of the racetrack. I wonder if Pepper got to the inside of this 3 car and sent him.
That is the number 3 Motorsport USA McLaren GT4 entry. And there's something's wrong with this car. Oh! Right rear.
You could see it grabbing down the straightaway as Pepper was just trying to feel it out. So right rear, look at that.
Broken.
So I'd imagine that Pepper must have slid to the inside possibly, or if the McLaren spun and he got into him. Can't believe it. Cannot believe it. The frustration right there. You're just amped up. You're ready to go. Your teammate has just done a brilliant job. And suddenly at the last moment, drama.
Well, with it being that right rear, Cal, again, this is purely speculative, but you might think in that 3-4 he was going around the outside of that number 3 McLaren and just clipped him, perhaps coming across.
Dan Rogers behind the wheel of the number 3 McLaren currently. Racers Edge bringing their car in.
And no caution full course as of yet, just a corner station caution at this stage. I don't know how that 3 gets out of that gravel though without some help. And if they got caution right away, it would have been really beneficial for the number 93 Acura here, the Acura Accelerated Services Racers Edge car. And right before this happened, Blackstock had been turning some really nice laps too. He was in the groove. And now the full course caution does appear. It was inevitable. So, see if we can pick it out here. In the background, yeah. Oh. That looked to be exactly it. I'm not sure that McLaren, maybe Cal, realized that Jordan was going around the outside.
Right. Oh, that is devastating. He had put in a perfect drive, just immense pressure under those conditions by being on the right tire at the right time. There was concern about this Bentley being effective in the damp conditions, or particularly on the Pirelli wet weather tire, but we talked about the fact that this had been a brilliant day in terms of their pace today, but also what it related to Spa at the end of this month in the third round of this championship, where you typically see some wet, and this Bentley would perform there as well.
Well, of course, they are the points leaders in the Intercontinental GT Challenge. So to have this happen here, absolutely gutting. And you can see Jules Bougnat beside himself. Here's the leader at this stage with the caution out, the number 34 of Farfus team car, the number 35 of Yellola, both Backenhorst BMW GT3 machines, and with the caution out, Farfus into the pits. See how this plays out. And again, we were talking about the drive stint times. Farfus has been in this car a while, and so you've got to be tracking that as well.
I would think he'll be jumping out.
Yeah, certainly. You can't drive more than 65 minutes straight. You have to reset your drive time. In a stint, you can go up to 3 hours in a row with those resets. And Augustus has just put on an absolutely fabulous display here in the opening laps, or opening couple hours of this race.
Augusto did too.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Augustus Farfo.
Augustus Farfo, yeah, one of the great Roman leaders. Farfo Augustus. Man, what a magician he could be.
Oh, he's magic. He's fun to be around.
Yeah, he is a character.
Good guy.
You can see, folks, if you're not familiar with this, one of the really important parts of these pit stops for the refueling is they have to attach a ground cable. And when refueling is done, that can be detached. And if that is missed and left attached to the car, as it leaves, that's a penalty. So you've got these refuelers are really watching what's going on. As soon as the fueling's done, they just disconnect that. Down and on slicks, away you go.
And you see the choreography there between the mechanics to work. Just one wheel gun and 2 mechanics only allowed to do that 4-tire change.
It really is choreography.
This is where it gets good. Look at this right rear, where the wheel comes from. It's up on the wall and he grabs it.
You cannot restart. You have to have the car off during refueling or anything being work done, and it cannot restart until it's down off the jacks and the wheels are in contact with the ground. That was well done.
It was, and the reason there was a delay in releasing him is that you have a minimum full stop time of 112 seconds. So they were so efficient with the service there that they would have been underneath that number if they released him immediately.
That's the good news. When the car sits after all the stops done, it means they're ahead of the time game a little bit, and they can deal with it.
So the K-Pac squad will be frustrated by the length of time it's taken to get this car and get it back to the paddock.
Full course caution here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the inaugural Indianapolis 8 Hours. And the reason being an incident between this car, the number 3 McLaren in the GT4 category for Motorsports USA, and this one, the number 7 Bentley Continental GT3 of Jordan Pepper, who after an amazing 2.5 hours of racing, watching the background here, Jordan's on the outside, there it is.
Yeah, he just comes and accelerates out of turn 2 towards turn 3 and trying to go around the outside. I don't think the McLaren saw him, or Jordan didn't give him enough room. I hate to pass judgment from such a long shot there. We had some drama here for the 93 car, cut down a left rear. That's been the problem here, and look at this car crab with the broken suspension. The right rear is basically out of control. You can see all of the debris and the shingle come out of that right rear corner, and that is why Thomas Blum, the strategist there, and Jules Gounon just hands on his helmet, cannot believe what he's seeing. Victors at the first round of the championship in Bathurst, devastated.
Unbelievable. And when he came out of that little run through the gravel, I'm talking about Jordan Pepper, got back on track, that right rear looked like at that point it hadn't totally let go, so he may not have felt exactly the issue. And then when it did let go, you could see what happened here, and of course pretty good damage. That gives you an idea of just how hard the hit was, as Dan Rogers driving this McLaren, the GT4 entry for Motorsports USA, pretty severe damage to that left front corner. He's out of the gravel now. They're probably assessing, is that drivable at this stage? Leader in GT4 in, and Samantha Tan in the ST Racing entry with that absolutely fantastic Starry Night livery, the homage to Van Gogh. And as we're watching this stop, doing a full service stop here with our leader, let's check in with Ryan.
And Jules Gounon was getting ready to get in that car. At one point you had your helmet on and everything, and then when the rain came, the stint extended for Jordan. Let's start with the incident. You've seen the replay, I assume. What did it look like from your perspective?
I don't know. The problem is that the team did a fantastic strategy. We were leading with 60 seconds. The third driver, the fourth car was already 1 or 2 laps down. So I don't know. It's just the GT4 seems to have hit us on the back, but I cannot say anything. Jordan has done a good job, but I don't know what happened in that incident. This morning we really said that we wanted to take no risk with GT4 because we knew that could happen. And that's racing with multi-class, so I'm really, really disappointing because we are here to score points, and now it's going to be really difficult. Looks like the team wants to fix the car. I don't know if it's okay in the regulation to do this, but yeah, we came here leading the championship. Our main goal was to score points, and it was looking really good so far, but now this is how it is.
After the highs of Bathurst getting the big win at Bathurst for Bentley, and now the lows of the sport here, can you express the swing in emotion that you've been going through?
You know, this sport is crazy. One day you can be on the top of the Mount Everest, and the other day you are down the floor. I don't know how to say, grounding the floor. It's really hard, but you know, I've been driving with Jordan during 3 years. I've done also mistake, and we lose and we win together. So I don't know what happened. I don't want to comment on what happened because I might be wrong, I might be right, I don't know. But yeah, it's really difficult to accept now. But yeah, let's hope we can repair and score some points. But anyway, the K-Pax did a fantastic job all weekend, and yeah, that's the way it is, racing.
Thank you for the time.
Well, there is no quit in this K-Pax crew. Darren Law and that group, if there's any way they can fix that and get it back out, they're going to do that, Cal, and at least try and get some more time in and score some points for this driving trio.
Right, points are scored down to 10th position. There's 12 GT3 cars in this race. Right now, they've dropped down the order to 8th. They're 4 laps out of the lead, so there's no chance of really getting back onto the podium. I would think the most frustrating factor is the length of time it's taken to get that Bentley assisted and get it back to the paddock. I mean, K-Pax can perform magic, but not when they don't have the race car in their hands.
Yeah, that's a very good point. As long as it's out on the track, you can't lay hands on it, obviously, and get to it. I think if they get it back into the paddock area, not in pit lane, obviously, into the paddock area where all hands can get on the car and they can get it fixed, have an opportunity here as the field is behind the Acura NSX, the official safety vehicle of GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. And cars behind it showing a lot of energy push getting into these tires. They've done a little bit of a wave around here, and I think this is the rest of the field coming up to catch the field. That's usually an indication we're getting fairly close to a restart here and ready to go back to racing at Indianapolis. Field now starting to pick up the pace and starting to pack up just a little bit. As you can see, the wrecker there, or the flatbed that has the number 3 McLaren on board, has cleared the track. And it's down on the other end of this 2.439 mile facility that the number 7 Bentley was there, and I think they've got that car cleared. So they're letting this field go around, and Samantha Tan now behind the wheel of the number 438. That's the leading car in the GT4. Well, actually, she's second in the GT4 by scoring right now behind James Safronis in the number 8 Audi. And then right behind her is James Clay. And he won himself a championship a little bit earlier in this weekend. And I'm sure he's ready to celebrate with another aggressive arms up race.
Yes. James is actually looking aggressive even under caution here. I think for Samantha Tan, she hasn't been out in these conditions. So this is really the perfect scenario for her, being so impressive this year, is to just get these caution laps, to get a feel for the racetrack rather than being thrown into the race in sketchy conditions under green. She's able to traverse around the track right now and just get a feel for where the grip is, gradually build up the speed. See the cars behind her are trying to get it to push, because when you get that wave around, it's important that you get on it and catch up with the pack in case we go back to green and there's still a big gap.
Yeah, she's being encouraged, shall we say, from the teams and the officials to get after it a little bit, pick the pace up, and go get to the back of this field, and she's doing just that at this stage. There's a lot of dry out there on the track right now. Interesting to see the number 83 Acura, though, purposely driving down into a wet section of the track, so you wonder if they left wets on that car.
You'd have to think so. If he's looking to cool the tires down. I'm pretty sure at this point in this race that the 70% mark would have been reached for the Squadra Corsa team to secure Martin Fuentes another championship. So congratulations to Martin. We'll unofficially crown him, Greg. How about that?
Absolutely, and I think he's getting on board because he would like to be the one that drives out of that 14th corner and sees that checkered flag here in Indy at the 3-hour mark for those competitors. And he's just been superb in his first season in the Pro-Am category and doing an excellent job, so I don't blame him a bit.
And also just knocking out the drive time. I mean, you'd have to think that Alessandro Balzan would be their finisher. He's got a lot more experience even than Martin and certainly Mark Issa. So it's all about knocking out that drive time. They've got a maximum of 3 hours, 15 minutes per driver. Minimum drive time is an hour, but really every driver has a double stint to work the math out there.
The number 63 of David Askew exiting their pit stall. Caution flag continues, however, signs are that it could be ending very soon. The number 63 DTXT Mercedes AMG GT3 in the hands of David Askew has ducked into the pits and effected a refueling and I'm guessing tires, and is making his way back out onto the track here, trying to get this all done before we go back to green. Connor DeFilippi now has taken over the number 34 Walkenhorst BMW. There it is. Black car at the front of the queue, and he was magnificent in the pole shootout.
He was. He's the quickest of the three drivers in the three-segment qualifying, and then in the pole shootout, he laid down the fastest lap to grab the pole. And there's that incident between Jordan Pepper and the number 7 Bentley and the number 3 of Davis. And look right there, you can see that right rear is not aligned correctly. And as he starts to accelerate down the straightaway, suddenly it broke completely, and pretty much did a good job of just trying to control this car, keep it out of the fence. At that point forward, it was going to be a long day, and he probably broken a half shaft as well. Maybe he had no drive, thinking about it as well.
There's the reaction by the crew and by Jules Gouillon, ready to get on board here, all kitted up. Huge frustration and disappointment, obviously. And you also saw the issue with the number 83 and the tire, second one for that team. Excuse me, the number 93, second one for that team at this stage. So, and there you go. There is the Walkenhorst team. All smiles right now, obviously, by those drivers. So, I ask you a quick spin out there.
Again, slick tires going on. They do come out of tire ovens or tire blankers with a little bit of temperature, but David released from pit lane, probably trying to hustle around and regroup with the pack, and just got a little bit wrong. So again, with some of these drivers out for the first time today, experiencing these very slick and treacherous conditions, very easy to trip yourself up.
Those two BMWs running line astern here. Then you've got some of the GT4 cars, and then third in class and overall would be Mario Farnbacher in the number 30 Acura, but you can see it hasn't even popped into the frame yet. A lot of GT4 machinery, a few of the GT3 cars. There is the number 93 that we were talking about. I called it 83. I apologize for that, having the issues, but it's even farther behind them that you find Farnbacher, second or third overall into the category, and then the number 1 of Balzan leading in Pro-Am. And we've unofficially anointed Martin the champ. We'll do it properly at the 3-hour mark.
Here we go, Connor DeFilippi. First real hot laps of the day. He's been the hot man this weekend in terms of grabbing the pole, but feels the pressure immediately from Yaloli right behind him in the sister BMW.
Moves to the center of the track, just trying to dissuade Yaloli from trying anything. And you can see the far outside, those lefts, if you got up by the wall, still pretty damp up there. I think Connor was betting on that. Oh, big moment here for the number 20 of Halen. What a save.
Yeah, just got on the brakes. Maybe the brake bars was not been reset for these dry conditions. Typically, when it starts to rain, Greg, you wind the brake bars to the rear so you don't lock up the fronts. Maybe that adjustment had been made, and when he got on the brakes, maybe he had too much rear brake in it.
Boy, and look at Shelby Blackstock taking advantage of the little bit of confusion here. He went around at least 3 or 4 cars. The 2 BMWs, then the lap car, the 75 at this stage. And then look at this, way down to the inside is Balzan going by a number of the GT4 machines, tucks right in behind the 93 of Blackstock.
Timed that perfectly. That's showing his experience there, a 3-time GT champion. And a big battle here, the Bimmerworld Redline Oil red and white machine there, duking it out with the GMG Audi. That's the blue machine.
That's for the lead, I think, in that category. Clay going around Tan and Safronis.
Drying racetrack. See some fast times here immediately, I would think. Fastest lap of the day was Jordan Pepper on wet tires at 1:30.8. That compares with a pole time of 1:23.
And I think we're going to be into the 120s here in real short order at this stage. DeFilippi just sets his personal best.
He looks to the inside. Connor takes it in a little bit deeper on the brakes. He'll start to get into a rhythm now. Giloli has been out there for a little bit. Connor just getting his first green flag laps.
Boy, and look at this cue here. Here comes the 0-4. Colin Brown. He was really struggling on slicks in this wet track. Now it's drying up enough. He's going to be quick. Gets around Clay. Look at this great little battle in the GT4 category as the number 30 Honda Racing Acura down into the pits, Mario Fondbacher. It's interesting, why would you wait till the end of the caution has ended and it's actually back to green? I can see doing it at the end of the caution.
12 seconds. And a full lap around here is about 92, so essentially you're going to go down a lap. You watch this, the BMWs will come around and they'll still be on pit lane.
These two BMWs flying in formation, working their way through turn 14, up on to the front straight here and over the yard of bricks as Fondbacher leaves the pit lane. Today's coverage is brought to you in partnership with Acura, with Bentley, with Ferrari. Listen to that. You can hear the tires protesting as they're working through that very long duration right-hand turn 3 and 4. It's almost a big arcing double apex single corner. You've got to exit right coming out of 4 to get set up for the run through 5 and 6, the quick left-right flick, and then onto this long Holman Boulevard in color straight, all black and now coming up around the back of the number 63. David Askew, that car running 5th overall in the order right now.
Squirming across the racetrack. I think
David, this is an opportunity. Yaloli gets down underneath on Connor De Filippi and slices through. Now he's in a wet part of the track.
Got to get to give it to him. That's what he could do. He's trying to work with the traffic there. Giloli just got that position for Connor to defend. Probably would have traded some paint there. So smart driving by Connor. Giloli, I'm not sure there's any team orders right now as close as they're running, as hard as they're battling.
Here this weekend, but Connor, you ran a wider line through 11, heading into number 2, not far behind number 2. Was that GMG Racing Porsche got away with it. Of Robin Liddell, overall leader in that program, and Nick Giloli is the number 35. Oxford's BMW.
Great to see him back. Regular teammate of Andrew Davis over the years. Andrew, a regular teammate of Jason Bell, so it's the natural fit for all of them. But Robin had a big scary moment in qualifying yesterday when he got pushed up high by Spencer Pompelli into the wall. Like Connor, we talked about, you could hear the tires kind of swimming across the racetrack. I think that may be coming James Connor's car. And maybe they just don't have the tire pressure set just right yet, so maybe they'll start to build.
Sitting in the 3rd spot right now.
Giloli coming off that brilliant 20
a little bit of a margin over Jonathan Taylor, which in and of itself is a real interesting story that we'll get into a little bit more. Another off now, the 0-4 Colin Brown by Bill Oberlin is running at 6th overall, 3rd in Pro-Am. Just having a rough go